So one of the things that is a little bit different in the Temple of Witchcraft is a lot of witchcraft traditions have 3 degree systems, and our system is 5 degrees. Can you talk a little bit to why that is?
I would like to say that there was a great deep plan of amazing forethought of how that came out. But like many things that I think turn out for the best, it's sort of an organic thing that evolves over time. So when I began teaching these classes way back, like 1997 was probably the beginning of the first formal Witchcraft one. Um, people were looking for witchcraft, were looking for magic, and I was simply passing on a little bit of an expanded version of what I got from my teachers. And I basically went through a 2 degree program at that time, and I shared what I learned in the first 2 degrees of the witchcraft traditions we have today, which are still remarkably similar. We've added and expanded them to be a year-long class, but the kind of core mystery is the same for each one. In Witchcraft 1, the core mystery is like the psychic ability and feeling energy, and the what we call the oracular mystery, the ability to perceive beyond. And then the second degree, the mystery is really what we consider to be the fertility mystery, what a lot of people think of as the traditional kind of Wicca witchcraft things of the wheel of the year and the path of the moon and how to cast a circle and the 4 elements and how to do spells. And then when those classes were over, I thought, all right, that's what I got. Go forth and do your own thing. And people came back from the classes and said, what's next? And I was like, "Oh, I don't really have anything next week." He's like, "Well, of course you're doing all these other things, and you've talked about all these other things. What's next?" So I was really challenged to create things based on what I was interested at the time. And over the years, what came out was a class and a degree on what people call today core shamanism, or some aspects of what people call today animism. But the idea of looking at everything having an animating spirit and magic really being the relationship with those spirits and the ability to traverse to the spirit worlds, usually through ecstatic techniques like drumming and chanting and shivering and shaking and all that kind of good stuff. And it was just at the time when people were starting to make more and more comparisons between indigenous European traditions as a form of what anthropologists would consider to be shamanism. I know that can be controversial for some folks today, but I'm really using the definition of core shamanism as a set of techniques and a cosmological worldview. And you find that in a lot of the witchcraft traditions. I know one of my early introductions to it was Witchcraft and the Shamanic Road, although the original name of the book was called The North Star Road by Kenneth Johnson. And it was a great just example of looking at a lot of things I was familiar with through different eyes. And I took a lot of the Michael Harner workshops and things like that and really started to apply it to my witchcraft. And then so I ended up teaching a group of people that, and that evolved into the 3rd degree. And we think of that as the ecstatic mysteries, and the deep formula we went for over time was shadow work. And I know that's another popular term these days, but it was really a ritual and a very specific formula of conjuring the parts of you that are repressed to get into relationship and having a process to communicate and possibly integrate over time. And that was really the mystery of the 3rd degree. As I continued my teachings, I really got deeply involved in what we consider to be occultism and a lot of kind of traditional forms of the Western mystery traditions, and specifically Hermetic Kabbalah. Hermetic Kabbalah really brought together a lot of the things that I'd learned. People today think I have a really good memory because they can ask me questions and I'll kind of pull things out here and there. And I really don't think I have that great of a memory, but I really credit Hermetic Kabbalah for helping me organize what I learn as I learn it. And so I taught that as a worldview. It really fits nicely into a lot of the Greco-Roman mysteries, a lot of the Egyptian mysteries, and it really links us to our modern and ancient ancestors, from Wicca's link to the Theosophical societies and the Golden Dawn specifically, all the way through the occult movements and how tarot connects to some of these things, and really kind of going all the way back to the Greek mystery schools and through Alexandria and the Neoplatonists, all the way back to Pythagoras and the Egyptian temples even. A lot of my first teachers were all about witchcraft came from Egypt, but they couldn't quite prove it. So this was like a nice little connection to all those currents feeding a larger stream that is feeding modern witchcraft today. And so that became very powerful and really kind of focused on the formula of the Gnostic mystery. So really seeking to know things directly. And then through that process, really being able to commune with your highest self. So in that 3rd degree, we kind of go low and we go deep, and the 4th degree, we kind of go high and ephemeral into the higher self. And then, as they asked more questions, they're like, I really want to, get deeper into the mysteries. I might want to do this as you're doing this, sharing this with people professionally. How would I train to do that? And that's what the Witchcraft 5 came about. Before we were even considering a seminary, it was just kind of the deeper mysteries. And we used the model of the descent of the goddess. And that was the first part of it. And then we did the journey of the hero, particularly looking at figures like Gilgamesh and Hercules and the 12 labors as an allegory for the 12 zodiac signs. So we sort of used the 7 planets and the 12 zodiac signs as really a pattern to make sure nothing was hidden. If you can hit all of those powers and studying all of them, very little will be hidden from you, in the sense that it's very easy when you want to be completely eclectic to kind of avoid something you don't like, or really hit too heavy something you think is good. And when you follow a pattern, it really allows you to kind of look at things in a balanced way. So that's what we did. And over time, they became, I always like to say the Temple of Witchcraft started as classes in my parents' basement, because that's really what they did. And then we kind of moved from the classes into really thick notebooks. And some people today, they hold with pride their little black binders that, and they can see the notes went from this to this to this. And then eventually somebody said, oh, you should write books about this. So I started writing the books about them. And I thought, okay, this is out in the world and my job is done. But then people wanted someone to teach them through it and had questions. So I started traveling the country and teaching intensive workshops, and that became online classes. And so I say they started as classes, they became books. Those who graduated became a community, and then the community came together to be able to create something to hold the community, which is the structure of the Temple of Witchcraft. And that started around 2009. And that's when we really put everything together in the format of a full school. So it's been very exciting, but I like to say I had the vision since the early 90s that it was going to be 5 degrees rather than the 3. But this is just how it kind of organically evolved. And it's really interesting to see little bits that I never really thought about at the time fit so perfectly now. So I can only say on some level I was guided to a lot of this, and the people who gave me parts and shared with me their ideas and helped me integrate new things, particularly Steve Kenson and Adam Sartwell, were really instrumental in a lot of the final stages, the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th levels, and beyond into the 3 rays of witchcraft. They really helped shape and influence everything. And it's really to show how guided it was, that organically it sort of came together. And like any good system, it's not going to be mechanical and fit perfectly all the time. And I think that's part of the beauty of something that's alive. It's going to have its rough edges, and people are going to adapt it to suit them.
I would have to agree with you that that it feels organic when you're going through that process. Even though I trained in the online school and Scott trained in the online school as well, and now we both teach in person. So I'm having sort of I know my experience going through it, and then I see my students' experiences going through it, and I get to share that with them. And there's a flow to it, like just the way the structure is set up, it kind of draws you more inward as you go, and then it kind of spins you right back out. So you're taking everything that you've experienced and everything you've learned through the process of those degrees, and you're able to share that more so with the community at the end. And it absolutely is a process that I think does, you said it hits on all of those different levels. So by the time you finish the whole system, there's really not an area of occultism, of your practice, that you haven't at least touched on, heard of, experimented with, even if it's not part of your, integrated into your daily practice. If it's something you do for homework and then you never look at it again, I rarely go anywhere, in a witchcraft sense, and someone's talking about something I've never even heard of before, which is, sometimes it's a little sad, but at the same time, you're getting a really, really solid, thorough education, and you're thrown into things that you wouldn't choose for yourself necessarily. There's a lot of times in mystery school that there was an assignment that I did not want to do and would not have chosen for myself if I had remained a solitary practitioner, but it challenged me in ways that I did not expect. And a lot of those things have become integral parts of my daily practice. And I never would have had that experience if I hadn't had someone, I'll say encouraging me to do that. I mean, pushing me, but encouraging me to do that work.
I think that I really want to bounce off one aspect, the educational part of it, because I think that each of the levels the information that's there. So, as a 5-degree process, we're going through the elements, but in each of those elements, we're sort of exploring a mystery of that element in a very unique and charged way, with fire and the oracular mysteries, and, earth, the outer temple, and expressing the inner into the outer, those, there's a part of me that's like, like the first part is like, like preparing ourselves to go on a date, and then witchcraft 2 is sort of like setting the table and inviting the guests. But the first guest that arrives is witchcraft 3 is that really deep part of ourselves, like, and that prepares us for the witchcraft for going into the, these higher realms, or these however we want to categorize it. But like, I think that we can see it in a lot of ways, but ultimately, like, it's through those elemental actions and through those learnings where we get that knowledge that's important, so that when we go somewhere, we do understand what's happening. Like, oh, I know what that is. Like, you understand how it functions, or you understand what they mean. But I also think that, like, there's a completeness to it when I think about the movement through L5, that, like, I really touched upon the elements within myself, like, and that really brought me somewhere. Christopher or Sellena, I don't know who said it, but when we spiral back into the center, at 5, like, that was very true for me. And it's surprising how many things, as you had said, Sellena, that, I didn't think I would need that, and then all of a sudden it's very relevant, in the last few years. There's so many things from Witchcraft 4 that were of such great service to myself, and to the world around me, to my home, for healing people, but also, just to students and stuff, and setting spaces and things that, maybe initially when I learned it, I wasn't like, this is not my favorite thing, but now I'm like, oh yeah, I get how this is super important. Yeah, this is really great stuff. Like, I'm glad that we have 5 degrees.
An interesting part to think about, that's not always obvious, but if you've caught one of our earlier videos for this month where we talk about fire in the east, if you look at the sequence of the elemental degrees, it's fire first, which we put in the east often, and then earth, which we put in the north often, and then it's water in the west, and then air in the south, and it literally spirals you to the center. And then once you graduate through all the 5 degrees, then you have to kind of recreate yourself by spiraling back out again. So that was one of those moments that wasn't purposeful. I didn't think about that when we put it together. It all kind of happened organically. But then someone pointed out that pattern to me, and I was like, wow, I couldn't have thought of that myself, but it worked out perfectly. So the spirits are with us.